does record. So,
yeah, got it.
all right, so we are live. So I'll just do like an intro spiel and then we can dive right into it. So, hey everybody, welcome to the Dan Bullman Photography Podcast. I'm joined tonight by a very special guest. I have Frederick Van Johnson, who is a photographer and multimediographer who has been the host of the This Week in Podcast, This Week in Photo podcast. So for those in the audience who might not be familiar with the show or you, Frederick, why don't you just give a quick introduction to you and what you do?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. This is a blast, Dan. But the gist of This Week in Photo. Well, first of all, who am I? So Frederick Van Johnson. My pedigree, if you will, is I was a combat photojournalist in the United States military in the Air Force, and I did that for 8 years, shooting film back in the day when film was all we had to shoot. So that's when I started on Nikon gears, loading film. We actually used to bulk load our film ourselves. So none of this, go buy it out of the box stuff. It was we would crank it and put it in the cases ourselves. I'm starting to sound like my granddad. In my day, but we did, and we loved it. But it was fun. So that's where I cut my teeth in photography and geek stuff and all this. And it's interesting, while I was active duty, that was around the time when the Air Force made the switch over from film to digital. So, so we got a chance to receive some of the first digital cameras in, these like $15,000 cameras that were literally Kodak, Nikon, hybrid Franken cameras that were like around 1 megapixel for 15,000, and the battery would just die like that. But it was a glimpse of the future. So we received those in, and switched everything over and started off with like Photoshop 1, and so it was an interesting time. So fast forward to today, and I'm skipping over lots of chapters, but fast forward to today. So This Week in Photo is an entity that I don't want to say I created it, because it was created by two friends of mine, Alex Lindsay and Scott Bourne. They started it many, many years ago. And then, they abandoned it on the side of the road like an old cabinet nobody wanted. And I picked it up. And I'm like, hey, I could fix this. So I fixed it. And back then, I think the audience was really small. I think it was around maybe 2,000, 3,000 strong. Mm-hmm. And now it's many, many multiples of that. So I grew it from, kind of the cabinet on the side of the road to a media entity. And This Week in Photo, as it stands today, it's a network of photography related podcasts that cover a variety of genres in photography. But as we'll talk about, it is morphing into something completely different, or not completely different, but different. So we'll talk about that during the course of the interview, I think. But that's kind of where I am now. The This Week in Photo, pushing that forward, as well as still trying to find time to shoot from time to time. It's like, I was having dinner with a friend of mine last night, and we were talking about how we have all these great tools and cameras and drones or whatever, and they just sit there and they mock us because we don't have time to use them. So you buy this thing, you see other people's work, like, look at this amazing thing. Like Trey Ratcliffe is in Barcelona doing shots with his drone, and you're not, So it's fun. Yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way though. This is the best career / hobby / I don't know what you call it to be in.
Yeah, passion. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I probably found This Week in Photo maybe 2 or 3 years ago. I started listening to it at work when I was in grad school. And one of the things that really drew me into the show was not just the discussions of the gear and all the latest tech and the exciting things that were happening, but sort of the social impacts of technological changes or things that would happen. So I've gotten really heavily into Instagram in the last year or so. Yeah. And particularly here in Boston, the photography community is really heavily integrated into Instagram. Like if you're a photographer, you have an Instagram account, and it really affects the way that people shoot and share. And so I kind of wanted to get your feedback on what you think about Instagram and some of the things that are going on. And so one of the things that I've noticed, particularly with portrait photography, is that a lot of photographers are like chasing to get their work reposted on feature accounts, which are basically, for people who don't know what a feature account, it's basically an Instagram account that curates and reposts other photographers' works. And some of them or have massive audiences. Like there's one that's called Moodygrams that has like, I think 750,000 followers. Wow. So it's a way to like really reach a broader audience. But what happens is a lot of these accounts, they tend to feature like a very specific style of work. And then you'll see someone do something creative and it gets reposted. And then you'll start seeing other photographers like all over the country and all over the world just copying that and trying to like chase that popularity. So I kind of wanted to see what you thought about some of these trends in Instagram and how it's affecting the way photographers create work.
That's a great question. Well, and it's a multi-pronged answer to that. So
yes.
I think Instagram is fantastic, you know, for just for the sheer democratization of photography in a lot of ways. I know there's other services out there, 500px, Flickr, SmugMug, you know, extra, etc. But Instagram was the one that started and is solely kind of mobile based, and it's for the now kind of and forward looking generation of photographers. So, you know, all hail Instagram. I think it's great. It's not without its flaws, but I think it's great. Now, on the other side of that coin is what you were talking about with these featured accounts. You know, it's a tough answer because on the one hand, if you're a new photographer, you want to be inspired by what other people are doing, and you want to say, hey, I want to go try that. Hey, I have a different twist on that thing that guy did. Let me try to, you know, and you see there's nothing new under the sun, right? So everything has been generally done before. So you see a certain kind of art that resonates with you, you want to go try it. And then the other side, I was having a conversation about this the other day. We were talking about how those kinds of, that kind of, I don't know if you call it herd mentality, but that kind of mentality is kind of like the Darwinization of photography, you know, where it's the survival of the fittest gene, right? So you've got an idea that then many people try, and then it branches off into something else, and many people try that, and it almost becomes like a meme / gene out there that's trying to propagate itself creatively, which is fine, you know, because anytime you're creating art, or you're not sitting there having your gear taunt you for not using it, it's a good thing. You know, it's a good thing to get out there. But at the same time, you know, the other side of that, it's a three-sided coin. The other side of that is you know, after a certain point of kind of using others' work to be your booster rockets or as your training wheels to get your own land legs, at some point you have to start being the person that's leading that gene movement.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah.
So you have to start, you know, based on the synthesis of all the things that you've learned as a new person coming in and that excitement, naturally things will start to show up that are like, you know what, I think I really like taking pictures of people, or I think I really like black and white and war type photography, or I really like macro and this kind of macro, or cinemagraphs, or whatever. You know, your natural inclination will start to expose itself. But if you don't shoot, it'll remain hidden. You have to shoot and get that mileage on your trigger finger in order for what you really are to emerge and what you really like to emerge. My mom used to say, it's like, she used to tell us when we were kids, I'm one of 3 boys in the family, and she used to tell us that we have to date. You know, dating has a purpose, and it is so you can find out what you don't like. Right?
Yeah.
So it's the same. It's not like you want to go out being a womanizer, but you have to find out what you don't like so that when you commit to it, you know, this is where I'm supposed to be. Same with photography. You have to date several different genres of photography in order to know which one is right for you.
Yeah. You have to take a picture, like take some pictures of some trees and be like, yeah, you know what? I don't really, this isn't doing it for me.
It's not for me. I'm always arguing with those trees. I don't know why. I'm going to move on.
Yeah. They don't even appreciate it. Like,
yeah, I don't need you in my life tree.
it's too funny. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, it's like you said, it's a double-edged sword kind of, because on one hand you can see so many other people's work on Instagram and you can get inspired by that, and you can have your work seen by so many more people than than would normally have seen it maybe 10, 20 years ago, like pre-internet. Like you could basically do a gallery showing or something and maybe people would come to see that. But now, you can post a photo and people from all over the world can find it on Instagram.
Oh my God.
So,
yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, like you're saying, like back in the day, it was a big deal to get a gallery showing because a lot of people would see your work versus just the few people that stumbled on it in your place or, hanging on the wall in your school or something. And now you could take a photo, even with just one of these things with your cell phone, you can take a photo and, before, not that I'm encouraging people to take photos of their food, but you could take a photo of your food, and before you get up or get to the last course or the dessert, thousands and thousands of people can have seen it and commented on it, before you even leave the restaurant. That seems like, people today are like, yeah, of course, whatever, that's the internet. But that's part of the magic of digital, versus a more analog based technology, is that that exposure to the entire planet, or at least the connected ones on the planet, to see your work whenever you want, and for people to filter down and see different genres through hashtags or whatever sorting mechanism they're using.
Yeah. And I think in some ways, like someone in the chat, they asked a question if they thought that Instagram's making it harder or easier for people to get seen. And I think in a way, like, it gives people who have talent actually break through, whereas before they might have had to get through certain gatekeepers or get, because like not everybody's going to be published in National Geographic. Not everybody's going to, shoot fashion ads and have their work out there. But if you have some talent as a photographer, or you have something that's unique or interesting, like, you can sort of break through on the platform and people can find your work.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of that is everybody's doing that. So it's like, it's open to everybody to post. So it can be hard to cut through the noise. Like,
yeah, but that's everything. That's everything. That's basically the engine of the internet, and photography is just one facet of it, where like it's the democratization of this stuff, right? So the internet tide raises all the ships, even the bad ones. So the great thing about the internet is it gives everyone a voice, and the bad thing about the internet is it gives everyone a voice, right? Same with photography, So the net of that is, in a good way, I'm an eternal optimist. So I think the positive of it is that, you, by giving everyone a voice, the people that have something substantive to say, you have to be that much more eloquent. You have to be that much more creative with your work to stand out from the pack, because the pack is rising. Like, the pack is where the professionals were 10 years ago. That's where the pack is. So now you have to be that much better in order to get your work seen. So yeah, it's fun. It pressure makes diamonds, or cold dust. So
something along those lines. Yeah. I think it's interesting too, and I want to get your thoughts on this. This is something that I just thought of. There are a lot of like people who are, have been longtime professional photographers who maybe didn't embrace Instagram or social media, or they don't know how to use it. And some of those folks are complaining that, oh, well, now any, jerk with a cell phone can post photos on Instagram and get famous. What do you think about that kind of attitude?
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. So it's the same. Humans are funny. We are a funny species because we always resist change, and the ones that resist change are the ones that kind of, back to that Darwin thing, that fall off the edge. It's like whenever I hear that from people, I think of the argument. It's like several arguments. It's like digital versus film. Real photographers shoot film. That digital stuff is for lazy people. And then you go back even further, you could put it in the automotive industry. Oh, what? Yeah, come on. A car, an automotive engine. I trust my horse any day of the week over your gasoline-powered doohickey, right? So, and it goes on and on. And those people that made those statements, where are they? They are, history has forgotten them. And then the people that say, hey, I want to try something new. Maybe there's something to this. Let's push the ball forward instead of pulling it back. Those are the ones that survive and thrive versus the complainers and the Luddites that say, I don't need this. I'm going to stick to this. And the people, generally that I've, in my own experience, I can't speak for everyone, but my own experience, the people that rail against technology are the people that don't understand it for some reason, right? Like they'll look at Instagram and say, oh, that's so complicated. And I don't want to get on there and embarrass myself, or I'm not good enough, or, oh, it's all kids on there or whatever. It's just like the people that rail against Snapchat. I'm not on Snapchat, but the people that are on it and have built giant audiences on there are doing phenomenally on there. People that don't understand it say, hey, that's crap. That's just for kids and, blah, blah, and all that. It's the same thing over and over again. Once you recognize those patterns, you can not get sucked into them. Right? Exactly. Yeah. Same with drones. It's like with drones. People are like, drones are, I would never fly a drone. It's too much FAA regulations. I don't want to be peeking in people's houses with a drone. And then the people that are trying them are on the leading edge and are going to be the ones in like 2 years, 5 years, or whatever, that are building companies around aerial photography services and that kind of thing. So yeah.
It's funny, I remember I took a history of photography class one time, and even photography itself was railed against when it was the technological thing. Like the painters were like, oh, this is ruining art. Like you can just press a button and take a picture. And other people would be like, it's too realistic. Like people want to have, a painter render a nice version of themselves. If they take a picture, it's going to show all their flaws.
Yep. Or same with desktop publishing in the 80s, right? It was now these graphic design programs and page layout programs, now anyone can be a designer, whereas before you had to have your artboard and X-Acto knife and triangles and all that stuff to lay out a simple brochure. Now you had software that you could just click and do it. And of course, the traditional designers were always like, oh, that's crap. No one wants to see that. I'm a real designer. I use, lithography and X-Acto knives and all this stuff. You guys, you take your Mac. Your Macs are going nowhere.
Yeah.
Fast forward to today, and Apple is the most valuable, if not one of the most valuable companies on the planet. So
exactly. And the stone keeps turning. So someone has asked in the chat, Flickr or Instagram, which one's better?
That's like saying a knife or a fork. Which one is better, right? So the answer is yes. Flickr is great. So Flickr, in my opinion, and I have to say this is in my opinion, and this is not even TWiP's opinion. This is my opinion. So Flickr is great. It is a powerful, powerful service that I think in many ways has gotten a bad rap because of all the bad news, including security breaches and changes of management and acquisition and all kinds of missteps that Yahoo, the parent company, has made. But Flickr itself has remained true. But you can't discount all that stuff that happened to Flickr and that's going on, especially when you're entrusting all the work that it takes to upload your images and organize them into categories and build your audience and all that stuff. You have to take that into account when it's like, oh, well, are they going to go away in a couple of years? Maybe not. Even though it's fantastic, it may be gone. So who knows if it's going to be gone, but you have to take that into account. So Flickr is great for that. Instagram is a completely different beast, right? Flickr is designed to be galleries and, engage conversations around photos and likes and, groups and all that stuff. Instagram is light. It is very lightweight. It is I call it the toilet paper roll, the never-ending toilet paper roll of photography. It just keeps going and going, and it's not designed to be all the stuff that Flickr is. Flickr is more in the genre of 500 PX and Smug Mug, with those more robust services that want all your photos, and they want you to build galleries there and share them with people. Instagram is more about instant, here, this is what's happening right now. Here are a few words about it. Here's a title, take it or leave it, on to the next one.
Yeah. I think for me, it's all about where people's eyeballs are at. Like, where are people viewing photos the most? And it seems like just at this point, Instagram's the most popular. Yeah. I mean, if I were to go to a photography meetup in the city or in New York or wherever, and I'm like exchanging contact info for people, the first thing people ask for is an Instagram. I don't think I've had, probably in forever, it's like, hey man, what's your Flickr? Like,
yeah. It's like, that's, not to throw shade on AOL, but that's like saying, hey, what's your email address? Oh, it is johnstevens@aol.com. That instantly, like, people draw inferences on who you are based on that, right? Same with Flickr. Hey, where's your stuff at? Oh, it's on Flickr. Oh, okay. So it's like, what do you, it's like, for better or for worse, like in Silicon Valley or any big city, people tie your net worth to where you work and what you drive and where you live, right? So it's the same online. It's like where you live, where you choose to put your photos is a reflection of who you are in a lot of ways. So
that brings up another interesting point that I was thinking about recently, with like the number of Instagram followers you have and how much value people attach to that, to the point where you like, it's very interesting. Like when I go to a photography meetup now and I'm like exchanging contact info with people or following another person on Instagram, there's this interesting thing that happens when they first type in your name and pull up your page, and they're almost like sizing you up. And the first thing they see is that follower count and like the first couple of photos you got on your page, and you can just watch their face and their reactions.
As they start looking through you to the person behind you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice, Dan. So, okay, I'll talk to you later, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because I was talking to a company that wanted me to review one of their products. It's a younger startup company. And TWiP itself is giant, right? It has a huge reach, and especially in the photography vertical. But my YouTube channel is not strong. It's like 11,000 people on there or something. So, which might be a lot in some circles, but in other circles, 11,000 is like, a drop in the bucket. So they were like, they said something like, they sent me the unit, and I was in the middle of moving, so I didn't have a time to like review it and look at it. And the guy was like, this is over a text message conversation. He's like, well, we were kind of hoping you would review it because there are other people with more substantial YouTube followings that we want to get. I'm like, I don't know how to feel about that. That's like a girl saying, you know what, I would date you, but there's a guy over there that's more handsome than you are, so I'm gonna like at least give me some other excuse, So yeah, it is. I mean, it is a metric. Like your social footprint is a metric. That for social circles, it's a metric about, okay, how popular is this person? But even in professional/marketing circles, companies literally look at that, and there's a dollar value that you can associate with your overall footprint. If you sum up all of your social presences, like Facebook, YouTube, Flickr, Google Plus, if anybody's still there, 500px, all that stuff, and then say, hey, this is my number, this is my reach, this is how many people I potentially can reach if I talk about your brand or service or whatever, it has a lot of weight, especially when they consider like how much reach they could get using traditional advertising means, like outdoor advertising or magazine or television. Our numbers sometimes eclipse those numbers for a fraction of the cost that they would spend on those. So, and that fraction is huge to us. Like, put it in context, a television show that reaches like half of what TWiP would reach might cost, $60,000 or something for a couple of insertions, where it's a fraction of that on This Week in Photo. So, and more targeted and more engaged. So
exactly.
Yeah. So it depends. But yeah, you're right. It's your social media footprint is definitely a part of who you are and how people will evaluate or judge you these days.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like, I wanted to pick your brain about another topic of like sort of branching off of that of micro influencers. I don't know if you've heard of this or like seen some of the articles in the media about this, saying that over the next like 5 or 10 years that the most basically targeted or successful advertising will be through social media micro influencers. So people who have like an audience of like 5 to 100,000. You see different numbers depending on the articles, and the reasoning behind this is, so say a fashion brand, they want to advertise their new handbag or something. You know, if they give the handbag to say like Kendall Jenner and she makes a post on Instagram, you know, that reaches a lot of people. But for like the average woman or person who's looking at that, seeing like Kylie Jenner's image is like unattainable.
Yeah.
But like a local fashion blogger or something who makes the same post, it's almost like, oh, like, well, if like Jennifer is, you know, has that handbag and she's got 6,000 followers or whatever, you know, maybe I'll buy that. Like I can actually like get that style. I like that style.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that as it pertains to the photography industry and how you think these types of trends will impact brand deals and that sort of like targeted advertising on social.
I think brands, and being a marketer myself, brands are always looking for the best way, the best and the most cost-effective way to get their message to consumers, not only just to get the message there, but to get the consumer to act and convert into a customer. And you got to skate to where the puck is, right? So where the puck is right now is in social media, like you're saying, with these micro influencers, and people are more likely to be influenced by someone who's more like themselves than a celebrity. It used to be celebrity, you know, the impact of it still is today. The impact of celebrity is undeniable. If I see, you know, one of my favorite celebrities or whomever using a camera that I want, then I'm gonna probably think, oh, you know, I don't know if it's gonna make me buy it, but I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, you know, we think alike or something, you know. But if I see someone that I've actually come in contact with, that I admire locally, or you know, that I'm following online of my own free will, and then they say something that I know I can trust, and I know that person maybe hasn't been paid, you know, to say, you never know. But you know, if you see like someone saying, hey, you know, I got this new iPhone, I'm really digging it, it's great, you know, and here's a couple negative things, but for the most part it's positive, I'm more likely to trust that than if, I don't know, Sam Jackson did a commercial and said, buy the iPhone now because it's the greatest phone in the world, you know, or any other celebrity. It's, you know, because it becomes more real and more tactile when somebody that's not a super celeb is talking about it. I think that's the way things are going. But like anything else, any ad mix, it's got to be a balance of things. So you can have a balance of micro influencers, like you say, and then also some celebs in there, but that mix has to be reflective of the audience that you're trying to reach. So if I'm trying to reach kids, you know, 15 to 18, and I want to sell them this particular device, I'm going to go to where they are, and I'm going to speak in their vernacular, versus I want to get adults 30 to, you know, 52 in my mix. I'm going to go someplace completely different. It's probably not going to be Snapchat for those people. So, you know. So, I mean, there's some people in there, but you know, not a whole audience full of people.
Yeah, definitely skews younger.
Yeah, yeah, as in it should.
All right, cool. So we were talking a little bit earlier about your roots in film photography.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit about the current state of film photography. So maybe around 2012, 2013, it really looked like film was like basically dead. I mean, like Polaroid had gone bankrupt, Kodak had declared for bankruptcy, Fujifilm was cutting all sorts of film stocks. But in the last few years, we've seen companies like The Impossible Project and Lomography and the resurgence of Kodak. So I wanted to get your thoughts on analog photography and see if it was something that you see continuing to grow into the future. And like, I don't think it's going to take over digital, but I wanted to see if you thought that people would be getting more into shooting film or more interested in it.
Yeah, I think so. That's a great question. And I will reveal to you on your show for the first time that I've ever told anyone this, because this is kind of brand new news. I have joined Kodak as their director of marketing strategy. So they are, like you said, they filed bankruptcy a while back, and now the company has a new breath, and they're trying to skew younger and speak to different demographics, one of which are the group of people that are interested in shooting film and are passionate about film. So the idea behind a company like Kodak, or just film in general, is I don't see it as like, film is never say never, but film is never going to come back and say and destroy digital, right? Digital is the evolution of photography. It's the next step. It's where, you know, there may be some other kind of digital that comes next, but we are fully embracing, everyone is fully embracing the digital. It's not even a movement. It's just the way things work now.
The current state of photography.
It's the current state. Yeah. State of the art. But with film is becoming, like you said, there's a resurgence of it, and it's becoming like vinyl in some ways. Remember, you know how there's like audio files are like, everything just sounds better on vinyl. I don't have any CDs in my collection. I don't stream anything. It's all vinyl. You know, it's that kind of, and it's harder to play vinyl. You know, it's all that, the analog feel of all these things are harder to do. And I think people are gravitating away or being repelled from the spray and pray. It doesn't matter how much I shoot, because I have almost unlimited space on my device, and I can harvest the right image later out of this, you know, trillion photos that I took today. I think people are moving away from that and more towards what I call more considered photography. Like when I was in the military, on some occasions we actually shot large format film, which is like 4x5 or 8x10 sheets. And each one of those was expensive. So it's a stretch to think about that with today's world. But if you think about considered photography and the idea that, okay, I only have this one sheet of film, or I may have a box with 15 sheets in there. I have 15 shots, and each one of those is a lot of money to process and print and all that. So I'm going to make sure I get that thing exactly right. You know, I'm going to learn my lighting. I need to know exactly what this exposure is. I'm going to meter, you know, so you spend more time per frame to make sure it's exactly right before you, even when you're pressing the button, like your shutter release, you're pressing the button, you're shaking a little bit. Did I get it right? Oh, let me go tweak this a little bit. You know, okay, I think it's right now. Click, you know. And then you do it again. We're moving back towards that direction with the film movement, where people, instead of like shooting, spraying and praying all over the place, you know, not that every frame needs to be considered, but, you know, we're being more considered about our photography. And then the romanticism of processing and printing and hoping that what you shot came out right, you know, versus just pimping and looking at the back of the camera. That was the negative of photography, not having that instantaneous feedback. And now it's coming back as the romantic side of photography, the not knowing and the anticipation of, hey, did it come out? Did I get the shot? Did all my work, and, you know, what does my lighting look like? You know, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think there's room for both in the world. And I think film now, yeah, you can use it for what like photojournalism and all that stuff. Of course, it's still great for that. But because there are other tools, like great cameras from Sony, Panasonic, you know, Leica, all these different companies that make these great tools, Nikon, Canon, etc. It's the right tool for the right job. So if you're out on a mission, you're shooting sports and all that, you're probably going to want to shoot one of those. But if you're doing something more artistic and more considered, then why not try film and play around with it, especially if you love photography. It's interesting that a lot of people today have never even, I would argue most people today have never tried the whole process from shooting film all the way through to processing and printing it. So
Yeah.
if you go through that flow once, it reaffirms and kind of reinvigorates the excitement for photography, because it's like, wow, I have control over everything. With digital, you have control over all the pixels, but when you're doing chemical based dip and dunk, there's a certain amount of anarchy there, because all these variables change. Like with digital, all the variables are exactly the same every time you press the shutter button, you know, the changes of light notwithstanding. But with film, you could get the same film stock and it could be different across 10 rolls of film. Like when if you process it, how much your chemicals have been used or their strength is going to affect the final output, how strong they are, how you mix them, the temperature of the room, the ambient temperature, everything affects it. So you're never going to get the exact same print. Even if you go through it, even if you make a print and then 10 minutes later make the exact same print with the same settings, it's going to be different, you know, slightly different on the other end, you know, which is kind of fun in the end. But yeah, so in the end, I think, long answer, I don't think film is going anywhere, but I think it, like you said, it's coming back and it's shifting more towards the folks that want to, you know, be more considered about their photography and skew it more towards the artistic.
Yeah. So do you think you would consider getting back into film, or is that just like too much for this? I mean, you've talked about like a lot of the gear mocking you on the shelf, and I don't know if your film gear is doing the same.
It is. I'm definitely going to get back into shooting film. But it's a commitment, and it depends on how much you want to get into it. So there's the level of, you know, like my friend Doug Kay talks about it on the show sometimes. Like, he's like, yeah, I'm shooting film now. I'm like, okay, how are you processing that? Oh, I send it off and I have it scanned. Like, so you're shooting digital. You're just putting hurdles in the way for yourself. Because, like, you're flogging yourself because for some strange reason. So, like, when I get back into film in earnest, and I'll probably do what Doug did initially, but when I get back to it in earnest, what I'd like to do is have that soup to nuts flow where I'm shooting black and white film. Color is hard to process. I mean, in slide film, I think the temperature tolerances for slide film is plus or minus 1 degree. Like if you're when you're developing, if it shifts up or down 1 degree, you can go yellow or blue on the final. So most people, as a result, most people shoot black and white when they're doing it themselves because it's much more forgiving. So that's probably what I would do. I would just set up a little dark room, you know, or at least a place to do it that I can break down and set up easily, and have fun with it. But in the end, though, you got to think about the final result, because in the end, you shoot film, you go through all the fun of processing and printing it, and you have this final print. Then what? Right? So you got to
put it on Instagram.
Now you're gonna scan it and put it on Instagram. It's like, and then someone may say, "Oh, I could do that," and do the exact same thing digitally in 10 seconds. So it's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah, it's so funny how things have changed.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk. I love the term that, I don't know if you've coined it, but I'm just going to credit it to you. The term multimediographer, because I think you're the first person I heard use that.
Yeah, I'm going to take it.
I think it's really interesting that, like, because, you know, for me or for a lot of photographers today, you know, we're not just shooting still images, we're shooting video, maybe we're doing some audio stuff, or, you know, writing pieces that sort of integrate some of these together. Like maybe you make a video and embed it on your site and have a blog post with it or something. So how important do you think it is for photographers to kind of stay nimble and try to master some of these other mediums like audio and video?
I think it's exceedingly important, but it depends on what you're doing, right? So the idea of multimediography, at least in my head, is not being so myopic that you restrict yourself to one medium, i.e. still photography, and then try to force every narrative that needs to be told into that medium. because sometimes, you know, especially today, we have all these different ways to storytell. The right way to tell a story may not be in a single photograph. It may be a video clip. It may be a cinematograph. It may be a mixture of things. It may be text. It may be a photo with audio narration on it, or a photo with ambient noise that you recorded and added to it. That's multimediography. Is just telling the story using the available tools rather than restricting yourself to, hey, I'm a still photographer, and or I'm a hammer, therefore everything looks like a nail to me. It's you have to, try, think of what you're trying to tell. Like say for example, there's some sort of political protest in a city near you, right? You could go and just shoot it and get emotional shots and picket signs and all this stuff to tell the story through photos. But wouldn't it be more interesting if you did that and recorded a little bit of ambient audio of the crowd shouting different things and to get the message across? It just adds that little bit of dimension to it. And so that the idea of multimediography spreads from that kind of stuff all the way through to commercial photography, through to everything. It's just basically using the available tools to tell the story rather than restricting yourself into one kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And like for me, getting into video was huge into that, because like I was just shooting stills before, but there's so many, it's opened up my mind in like the different ways to tell the story, and and trying to think about what format or mixture of formats is the best way to convey a story.
Yeah.
So sometimes, a podcast episode with straight audio might be the best, or sometimes, having a video would be better, or a series of images. And it's just, I think like with our current technology and the fact that most of this stuff is freely available to a lot of people, or like for minimal cost, it's important to be able to learn these things and try to like push your creativity forward with all the tools that are available to you. Yeah.
And another aspect of that is storytelling. We've because of the expediency of digital and the fun of it, and we all, myself included, we all have gear lust, right? We want the latest and greatest thing. So we as photographers, both professional, advanced amateur, and beginners, have, in a lot of ways, many of us have lost sight of the idea that all of this is about storytelling. It's about telling a story. If it's in a single frame, if it's in a video, if it's in audio, whatever, it's about telling the story in the best way possible versus just taking a pretty photo of something. And I've been preaching this for a couple of years now. It's like, you see, like, for example, you get on 500px and you'll see pictures of, a pretty girl, or a black and white of a dock or a pier with a long exposure, so the water is all smooth and misty and all that. And I love those photos. I look at them like, this is technically nearly perfect. It's beautiful. It's great. But then what's the story? There's no story behind it. Like in the case of the dock or the pier, I'd want to see like even a short paragraph that just text, just saying, I've driven by this pier 100 times, and today I stopped for some reason and I decided to try it, and when you know it, the sun was in the right position, something like that, just to give it that dimension versus just, hey, here's a shot of a flower, I hope you like it. Make something up, make up some fiction about it. It's your art. You could say, here's a shot of a flower, and I make up some science fiction thing about the flower or something, just narrate it. You could either narrate it with audio and post that, because you can do that with Instagram, narrate it with audio or whatever, and just have fun with stuff and tell stories instead of just giving pictures and expecting people to, figure it out and like your stuff. That was the other thing, back to that question that someone had about Flickr. And a couple of years ago, several years ago, Flickr was kind of people would use Flickr as like a crowdsourced culling mechanism, especially new photographers. So like it was almost the antithesis of 500px. So on Flickr, people would go out and shoot a bunch of shots, dump them all on Flickr, and then let the crowd pick the ones that they like. Like, oh yeah, everyone's liking this one. That must be the best one, right?
Yeah.
500px is the exact opposite. You do the culling, you make your photo perfect, and then you upload it, and then bite your lip. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, everything's changing. I mean, I think it's if you don't change with it and jump on that kind of idea of telling stories, you're just going to be swept away in the sea of mediocrity that is the other gazillion photographers out there that have the same or better gear that you have. So
exactly. Yeah. You'll be the guy who posts the picture of a flower and then the caption is just a flower emoji and then a bunch of hashtags.
Don't get me started on that. Yeah. The hash salad, Yeah, corned beef hashtag. Come on, man.
So funny. Yeah. So, as being the host of TWiP, you get to sort of be steeped in all the stuff, all the stories that are breaking in photography on a weekly basis. So, what do you think is the most interesting story that you've come across in the last year or so, and why?
That's a great question. I think it would. I don't know if it's any single story, but a genre of things that we've talked about, and that would have to be two. So drones, and it's been like a saga, like the FAA and people doing stupid stuff with drones, flying them and landing them on the White House lawn. Just seeing a nascent fledgling industry grow so fast has been really amazing to watch. It's almost like watching history unfold, because government, at least here in the United States, is struggling to keep up with the manufacturing and the technology that these things can do. And then there's, of course, there's always going to be stupid people and evildoers that do the wrong things with toys. But, it's seeing that evolve is one side of it. The other side of it is seeing how mobile photography has kind of taken hold and gone from, well, if I don't have a decent camera with me, at least I have my phone, I can at least take something, to my phone is better than the decent camera that I had last year, right? Yeah. And I can shoot, edit, and share directly from my phone and put it on services like Instagram with one hand while I'm walking to an appointment, So those, and then companies like Apple and Huawei and Samsung and et cetera, creating these amazing tools that are leveraging the processors inside the devices to do computational photography, like with the iPhone 7, like this one, it has the two lenses on it, so I can do computational photography based bokeh with it and throw things in the background out of focus, and seeing stuff like that coming from a world of film, and then looking at these advances in these little things, it's like, that's nearly magic. That you can do that kind of stuff, because sometimes you just have to take a step back and say, what's happening here? Like, I was driving my car the other day and I was using GPS, and my car has what do you call it? I forget what the name of it is, but it's got the cruise control that keeps you a certain distance from the car in front of you. So so I was sitting in the car thinking, I was like, what's going on right now? So I'm driving a car. I am streaming podcasts through high-speed internet. I am navigating using multiple satellites. My car is using radar to keep me a certain distance from the cars in front of me. There are multiple computers in the car controlling various things, all this stuff, and I'm flying down the road at 80 miles an hour, But we take all that for granted. And I think the same thing in the photography world. We take for granted that we have this little slab of aluminum and glass that has multiple processors in it, an insanely good camera in it, high-speed connectivity to the sum total of human knowledge on the planet, and we could speak to it. It does all this stuff, all this stuff, yet we still complain about it because,
Yes.
we still want the next better one, because this one's not quite good enough. I need one that's also going to moonwalk and tell jokes, right? So.
Yeah, it's wild. It's funny too to see like people get so amped about a camera or like a camera body or a new piece of tech that comes out, and then 6 months later something else comes out and it's like everybody forgot about that.
Yeah.
So like one of the things I remember was when Sony announced the A7R2, everyone's like, oh my God, this is like the greatest camera that's ever been made. And then that was only like a year or two ago, right?
Right.
And then,
right.
They announced the Sony A9 and it can shoot like, I don't know, something crazy like 24 frames per second stills or something like that. Like basically.
I must have it. Yeah. And the interesting thing is these whiz-bang features, putting on my marketing hat again, these whiz-bang features that manufacturers introduce into these cameras, and granted, they are innovating and doing some cool stuff because they have to. They have to create something that you're going to want as a consumer. But the dirty little secret is most people haven't used 80 to 90% of the features in their current camera. Right? They have all these things that it could do, but they feel like, well, and it goes back to that affinity marketing. Like, well, Joe McNally is using that particular camera. I must have that one if I want to shoot the Joe McNally level of work, which is completely false. I mean, if you look at like one of the most famous photographers ever, Ansel Adams, didn't even have a digital camera. It was camping out and was shooting on sheets of film, so but we're tied into this whole, wow, I need the latest and greatest. And then we feel bad because we get the latest and greatest, and this time span between when we put our credit card number in to get that one till when the next one is to make us hate the current one, we've done jack with that camera. Yet we still feel like we need to get the better one, right? So
yeah. And it's like, it's almost like a keeping up with the Joneses too. If you're hanging out with other photographers, like I remember, so I have a Sony A6000. That's like my primary camera.
The great camera.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it was like all the buzz like several years ago. And Sony, how their release pace is. They've already have 2 replacements for that camera in like 3 years.
Yeah.
And I had one friend who had an A6300, and he's like, oh, well, I've got the A6300. And then somebody else that was at a photography meetup we were at had the A6500. And then I could see the look in his face like, oh, man, like, should I get an A6500 now? I'm like...
Yeah, it's like, let me see your work with the A6300. Let me see your work with the A6000. You can probably run circles around people. Like, if you have the skill, it doesn't necessarily matter that much which camera you have, unless you're doing a type of photography that you need ultra low light sensitivity or whatever. Then if you're just doing basic photography, you're okay with 90% of the cameras out there. And it's those people that are lusting after that next model are the ones that are making excuses, right? They're like, well, I could shoot like Dan if I had the camera that he has, but I'm stuck with this one. So my photography is never going to be good as Dan's, right? Yeah. So it's the excuse that we give ourselves when it's not true. You can shoot, everybody can shoot almost as good as everyone else, all things being equal, if they put the effort in to learn the technique and the art behind photography.
Yeah. And like in that same conversation too, it was funny. Like my friend who had the 6300, he was like, yeah, one of our other friends who had the 6500, he was like, yeah, he shot this amazing video clip because it's got that stabilized sensor and it looks so smooth. And in the same conversation, he's like, yeah, I still haven't gotten into video yet. So I'm like,
exactly. Yeah, you should be buying cameras to, like, if you hit a brick wall because you're trying to do a particular project or something, and I can't get this thing done because I don't have this tool to do it, then you go get the tool. Right, to do it. Otherwise, you're just trying to be Batman, right? I gotta have every tool available to me just in case a villain comes and I need to use my batarang or this thing or whatever. I gotta have everything available to me for every available situation, right? Exactly. When the truth is, you have an idea or you want to get a shot, or you decide that, hey, I want to be a sports photographer. And I've tried it with my current camera. It just can't keep up. I need to get something that has a faster frame rate or lower light sensitivity, whatever. Then you go get that tool to get the job. You don't like, I saw a press release with something with all these features on it, and I need to get that because it looks cool. And I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to be the guy at the photo walk with an increment lower camera.
Yeah.
It's like my cameras, like I shoot Lumix, Panasonic Lumix. And what I do, like if I get a new model of Lumix and I know I'm going to be in a social situation, I will put black tape over the model number. And most of my cameras have black tape over the name and the model, so that, and you see people, they're just kind of, because they want to judge you based on your camera, and they're like, what is that? And then if they ask me, if they have the the will to come up and ask me, I'll say, well, I can't talk about it. I'm not saying it's new. I'm just saying I can't talk about it, which I can't. And it works. It works, because then people are like, oh, well, they have no idea, so they have to find another metric to judge you on. They're like,
so they pull up your Instagram feed then.
Exactly. Or like, hey, what are you driving? Oh, you must have a Lexus or a Leica. Okay, I got it. Yeah. Yeah. So crazy. People, humans.
The funniest thing, man.
Yep.
That's so crazy. So I wanted to talk a little bit about podcasting. So this is sort of a selfish question, I guess, but since I just started doing this podcast, I wanted to ask the question: what advice would you give to photographers who are looking to grow and build a photography podcast?
Yeah, well, I would say, first of all, it's about sustainability and longevity. Podcasting, because people that listen to podcasts, they want it once they find your podcast and they dig it, and they like you as a person, and they subscribe to it. You want to be releasing at the same time on the same day every week, so that they can count on it. So, if it doesn't matter, whatever day you determine is the best time for you, get it and stick to it, so that, if I want to listen to Dan on my morning commute, I know it's going to be in there. If he releases every Thursday night, I know for my Friday commute, it's going to be there, Yeah. And when it's not there, I'm going to instantly feel like, what's going on with that? Okay, let me go listen to something else. Right. So that, and then being consistent, and it's the hardest thing, like picking a time and a day and sticking to it is relatively simple. The hardest thing, and the most deceptively hard thing, is sticking with it over time. Right.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm talking like a long, long time, and not that it's going to take forever to become successful in it, but you want to make it part of your routine. You want it to feel like when you don't do your podcast, you are missing something. It should feel like you forgot your keys, or, you didn't take your vitamin that day, whatever. It should feel like you have forgotten something for that particular day that you've set aside to record. And that's the other piece of it. Depending on the frequency of your podcast, setting aside a specific day of the week and time that's your recording time, and sticking to that religiously. So you have a time to record, a time to edit, and a time to release, and do that over and over and over again until it becomes just routine. And that would be the best advice, or some of the best advice that I could give to new podcasters. Being consistent and setting a schedule for yourself. And then also, you probably know this, but ensuring that you have a social network set up for your podcast, but also an email list set up for your podcast, so that you are capturing email addresses. Otherwise, we've been talking about how great these social networks are, like Instagram, Facebook, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, they're great, but in the end, you are on someone else's land, right? You're subletting, and someone else has the lease, and they can kick you out at any time. When you have your own email list, if they kick you out, you still maintain that relationship with your listeners. So you could say, you know what? We were over there, but now come over here, everybody, because the party has moved for whatever reason, and you don't lose contact with those people.
Yeah. That's good too. It's very timely. I actually launched an email list last week. So
good. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
What service did you use?
I'm using MailChimp.
Good. Good.
It was very easy to set up, so I really, really like that.
Yeah, MailChimp is great. I used MailChimp for a while. I moved on to a system, which is, MailChimp is fantastic, but I moved on to one called DRIP, DRIP, and it allows me to do things like, well, I can drip out emails over time and sequences and all that. But it also allows me to do some really smart segmenting. So I could say almost sentence-based segmenting. So I could say, you know, send this email to all people that have registered within this window of time that have, you know, clicked on a link on in the last 3 emails that I've sent that have also subscribed to my podcast. You know, so only those people will get that message. And then I can also say, resend this message to that same group of people in 3 days, but only to the people that didn't open it. So you know, so things like that are pretty cool. You can, you know, do all sorts of little automation magic things like that, which I like because I'm a nerd.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I was so unconvinced about email lists for the long time, regardless of like, you know, all the marketers and all the people are like, you got to build an email list because it's the best way. And like, it's funny because I was like, everybody's on social media. That's where things are at. But because there's so much stuff posted on social media, even people that I'm like good friends with miss posts due to like not logging on at certain times or algorithm changes or, you know, what have you. So a lot of people don't open emails, but at least it's getting into their box. Most people check their emails every day. Like, unless they're getting totally inundated, they probably at least see it in the list. You know?
I think speaking about that from a marketing standpoint, you may not know this, but social media marketers have done extensive research on what's the best way to reach customers, obviously. So, you know, and pitting social media against email marketing is going to win every single time. If you're trying to sell something or get a message out, email marketing, generally, if you put numbers around it, social media converts, i.e. someone clicks and does something at a rate of about 0.01%, which is so, you know, for every 10,000 or every 1,000 people you have, one person is going to click through and do something. Whereas depending on your audience and how engaged you are with your audience, email can be many multiples of that, like 5%, you know, up in that higher level. So depending on what you're trying to do, and again, it's the right tool for the right job. So depending on what you're trying to do, if it's just something passive where, I just want to let people know about this shot I just did, you know, I don't care if they see it or not, you know, social media is kind of the place for that. Social media I look at as kind of a party. It's like, you know, like you go into a party, you don't want to be the guy in there with a bill dancing with a sign, right? You know, you know, the guy, people you see on the corner flipping the sign. If you're that guy and you go into a party or a club doing that, you're going to be ostracized. And that's kind of like, it's kind of like social media. Social media is more of a conversation. So that same guy, if he's like selling mattresses or whatever, right? That same guy goes into that party dressed normally and then strikes up a casual conversation with a couple people. And the conversation kind of goes over to mattresses, and then they start talking. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, I work over at that mattress place over there and they're doing a sale if you're interested. You know, that is much more appropriate than dancing with a sign. Email marketing is not that. Email marketing is more, you know, I see it as more like almost like a billboard, right? Like you're driving down the highway and you see this catchy billboard shot on an iPhone or whatever. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Let me jot that down or whatever, you know? So it's more in your face, but you have complete control over it. With the social media, you know, who knows what the nerds over at Facebook are going to do with Facebook next and change their algorithm. So now only 1% of your posts get seen by people, right? So, you know, or this guy has used this politician's name too much, so we're going to squelch his feed down a little, you know. They can do that kind of stuff. But with email, you have control over it. You know, you send it to your group and it's going to get to that entire list, versus social is going to get to whoever they decide they want to see it. So
yeah, exactly. And like if a service, I mean, most of the social platforms they're not totally going away, but some of them become less popular. Like Twitter now is not what Twitter was, you know, 5-6 years ago. So
Google Plus. Look at Google Plus. Right?
Yeah,
Google Plus was interesting because, like, let me look at my profile on there. Plus. So Google Plus, I did some experiments just to see like what the conversion was on that. And I don't know if it was basically abysmal, right? Like I think most of the people following me on Google Plus were either robots or filler or I don't know, because right now I have 620 almost 624,000 followers on Google Plus. But if I make a post on Google Plus and put something salacious like click here and get a free blah blah blah, or click here and even something like click here for nude photos of so and so, something that people like, does it have to click on? It might get 10 clicks out of 624,000, which great. But if I send an email with that same thing to like 60,000 people, a good percentage of those people are going to click on that link.
Exactly, yeah.
So, which leads me to believe that it's not real. It's like, I don't know what Google Plus is doing, but at least the followers that are on my account, either they hate me or they're just not interested. They're robots. Yeah, I think they're mostly robots. And there's really no good way to audit that either. What are you going to do? So, go through each one and interact with them. Are you real? Yes. Okay. Sorry. On to the next one.
Call down your list of 600,000 to the 12 people who are real.
Exactly. I bet you the 624,000 is probably 6,000. I would bet.
Right. Yeah.
It's probably 6,000.
It's too funny.
Yeah.
So I did want to talk.
The other thing on that, just to close that off, the interesting thing about that 624,000 number, brands see that number. Regardless of if they're robots or not, brands see that number and they're like, wow, this guy has some reach. So if I add that number into my cumulative social media footprint like we were talking about before, it becomes, over millions of people that I can reach, when we know that it's probably 10% of that, or lower percent of that overall. So, it's everything has two sides, right?
For sure.
Yep.
So I did want to, we're getting in on an hour here. I did want to talk a little bit about the future of This Week in Photo, because you did hint at it a little bit earlier. So just wanted to give you about some of the restructuring and things that are going on with it.
Yeah. So the main thing, I didn't want to give away too much of it, but the main thing is after TWiP 500, I put the brakes on TWiP, at least in some of the shows. And the main reason was because in a lot of ways I was just getting burned out with it. It was, and I felt like I was doing a disservice. There's a ton of loyal fans on TWiP. And I felt like I was doing a disservice to them by me not having my heart 100% into it. When things become like, oh crap, I got to go do the show, then it's time to rethink it. So I wanted to take some time to step back, rethink it. But then also the other thing that I felt like was going sideways for TWiP was monetization. So we were doing a lot of promotions and affiliate deals, and which we may continue to do some of them, but not to the degree that we were doing before 500. So I want to rethink. I took this time to sort of rethink how all of that stuff works. And This Week in Photo itself, I needed to go back to being more of a trusted photography news punditry source, rather than, okay, we're going to talk about this thing. And that, I want it to be, the CNN, BBC, whatever your favorite news network is of the photography genre. And that's what I'm going to make it into, and it was necessary to take these couple of months away from it just to kind of like take a breath, get the feedback from people and rethink how I wanted to do it smartly versus, one day, like we're doing podcasts and then 1 week, the whole thing just changes completely. It just made sense to shut it down. And then, this ties into what we were talking about email, because when we relaunch everything, we will tell everyone through email and of course our social channels as well, but it will go out through email. The new TWiP is coming live, blah, 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 go check it out, all that stuff. So yeah, I want TWiP to be a much more important, powerful and mature source for photography news and punditry versus yet another internet marketing channel. So that's kind of where I'm taking it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, I think it's even a feat in and of itself to do 500 episodes. And I mean, I know you weren't in it for all of that, but you were in it for a good chunk of the 500.
A good 400. A good 400. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I adopted it. It's now fully my child. So
yeah, it's about to go to college.
it's about to go to college. Yeah, and I got to figure out how to pay for it, all that. So yeah, it's I'm excited for the way it's going to go, because it's, you know, I've over these past couple of months, I've looked at a lot of and listened to and subscribed to a lot of podcasts that are outside of the photography genre, most of them, to kind of, you know, take things that I like about what they're doing and discard others, to kind of, just like we were talking about at the beginning, to synthesize what they're doing and what other respected shows are doing into what I want this next level of TWiP to be. So yeah, so then it gives me something like, okay, I can really be proud of that. This is going to be a really important property when we relaunch it. And I want it to be, when I say important, I want it to be trusted and influential. So when we say something on This Week in Photo, you can trust that it's, you know, there's no nefarious or reasons behind it, or we're not saying it for monetary reasons or whatever. It is what it is. So even if we take sponsors, when we take sponsors on the show, it will be with the understanding that if that sponsor does something sideways, we're going to call them out on it. We will definitely call them out, you know? So, you know, say, you know, camera manufacturer XYZ comes on and releases a camera that is clearly a dud. We're going to not talk about it because they're a sponsor of the show. It is news, right? So, but at the same time, we're not going to trash people for no reason. It's, you know, it goes down with the whole idea of being trusted and smart and timely with the things that we do and say on the show.
That's great. Well, yeah, I definitely look forward to seeing the new episodes and listening in again, because it's such a great resource just to tackle some of the things that are going on, and just hearing all the interesting discussions and different viewpoints from different photographers. I really loved it. Yeah.
Well, that's the nugget of TWiP, is that the different viewpoints from different photographers sometimes. And it, you know, frankly, sometimes we, even when we got it wrong on the network or on the show, it turned out right. For example, we put a photographer that is not necessarily into drones, and for some reason, drones were all in the news that week. So you put a person that has no idea, that doesn't care about drones, but they're a photographer, and that adds that level of relatability, because there are many people in the audience that don't care about drones. So that person, it becomes the spokesperson for all those people, you know, and they're like, yeah, I don't care about drones either. So, so it's going to be fun. And TWiP, and I've said this on the show before, TWiP is my therapy, right? So it is my weekly, I get to unplug from the world and talk to my friends, you know, both the people that are on the show and the people that are listening. I can consider everyone my, you know, all the TWiP fans and the co-hosts, they're all my friends. So it's almost like a group therapy session where we can all sit down and talk about photography for an hour and then go back to the real world afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. So I want to end here with just asking you one of the questions I like to ask a lot of the people who come onto the show, is, where do you see yourself going with your photography, or just in general in the next, say, 5 years? What's something that you want to tackle, or a project you want to work on?
Yeah, I've given that some thought. Well, the thing that gets me excited most in photography is, like I was saying, storytelling. So I want to move more into being able to tell a series of interrelated stories. So, you know, almost episodic. So I'd like to do that, and I want to do them. This first wave, I want to start a deeper experimentation with cinemagraphs. Are you familiar with cinemagraphs? Yeah. So like more artistic, multi-layered cinemagraphs with multiple layers of audio in them, and you know, so the like telling an entire story on the Z-axis is what I want to try to get into that and see if I can pull that off. So that's one area that I want to get into. The other area is mobile photography and seeing like what is possible, pushing the envelope. That what can you do with mobile that can be considered art these days, which is a lot because these mobile cameras are full-fledged cameras now, but they still have the wrap of that whole jack of all trades, master of none thing, right? So you have the supercomputer that can do your taxes and chat and Instagram and watch YouTube videos and on and on and on. How could it possibly be also a really good camera? So they come with that stigma. So I want to start showing that, yeah, you can actually do a fashion shoot with this. You can do real estate photography with this. You can do whatever, with some caveats. So I want to start experimenting and showing the different areas where mobile photography can, be actually professional photography. And then the third thing is drone stuff. So I've been bitten by the drone bug. So I want to, begin experimenting with the different ways that you can use drones, and then also reporting on the different roadblocks I hit. Like right now I'm in Sacramento, California, which is the capital of California. I'm literally right across the street from the Capitol. So, and there's a park right there. So one of my experiments is, can I fly my drone in that park? Right across the street from the Capitol. And I'm not going to do it illegally, but I want to see what the restrictions that show up are. Like, on the device itself, it's going to say you're in a no-fly zone or you can't go above this altitude. And then I want to report on that. I want to say, hey, if you want to fly near government structures like this, these are the restrictions, or don't do it at all, So so lots of stuff I have my eye on to play around with.
That's exciting. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show tonight. This is really a pleasure to just sort of dive in on some of these topics. I like hearing your perspective on things, and particularly with what's going on with Instagram and all that. So where can people connect with you on social media?
Well, before we do that, can I show you one thing that your audience may not have seen before?
Yes, please
do.
So
you remember I mentioned that I just started with Kodak as the director of marketing strategy?
Yes.
So Kodak is about to launch their new phone. It's a camera phone called the Kodak Extra phone. And I happen to have one of the only ones in the United States right now. And that's it. Ooh. Right there. So it's got a leather front. And it's, basically it's an Android driven phone that has some very specific Kodak photography type features built into it. Yes. And it's interesting. So I don't know when you're going to launch this particular episode, but that device, it's available in Europe right now, and it'll be available in the United States on the 23rd of this month. And it's available for pre-order on Amazon right now. So definitely
basically 4 days from today.
4 days from today, this thing will be out, and I've been carrying this around. You can get a little cool leather case for it, which makes it look even more like a kind of retro
it looks
camera.
Sleek.
Yeah, it is really cool. There's some really cool thought that they put into this in terms of like how it lays on the table and sitting up straight, and the buttons, like this button on the front here. That's the shutter button. It's a 2-stage button where you press it once to focus and all the way down to take the photo. And it's a real. The way I think of it is like my iPhone it's a phone, or it's actually a computer. My iPhone is actually it's a small tablet computer that goes in my pocket. This thing, even though it's running on Android, is a camera first. In fact, to get into the camera, you just double tap that button and you're shooting. So you double tap the shutter button and you're off into the races. So so it's fun. It'll be interesting. I'm interested to see how the market reacts to it, because it's it's different than your normal glass slab with aluminum back. It is glass, aluminum, and leather on the front.
Bring something a little like a slightly different twist on the camera phone.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, it's a true camera phone versus a phone camera. Right.
So that's cool. It's interesting to see Kodak getting into that kind of stuff, because that's not the first thing I would think of when it comes to that, but they do have all these other product lines that they're putting out. So I think it makes sense that this is something that they get into. Like mobile photography has become so huge that
yeah. And Kodak is, the company's looking at it from the standpoint of storytelling, right? So it's not, Kodak doesn't have any illusions that it's going to supplant the iPhone or Huawei or Samsung or any of those guys. But Kodak wants to be the operating system for creatives, right? It wants to be and because Kodak was a 100-year-old company, it has the feel of, it is a for-profit company, obviously, but it has the feel of being almost altruistically pro-photographer and pro-imaging and pro-storytelling, right? And that's what even on the film side of things, it's all about telling stories and less about, the size of the screen and the how many megapixels this is and this new operating system that now does this and pinch to all that stuff. It's more about the art and the science of telling stories, and I think that's a good way to think about it, because Kodak can play to that. That's what they do. They've been telling stories for 100 years. So
yeah, they really have. And it's interesting too, even like the reintroduction of Ektachrome, which they're working on now. It's like, like you said, it's a for-profit company. They're trying to make money on one hand, but they're not going to be raking in billions of dollars off of slide film. So it is something that's like, but it gives the sort of niche community of film photographers who are really into shooting slide film something to be excited about, and gives them a creative outlet. And that's something that's really cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So between driving this stuff for Kodak and This Week in Photo and squeezing in my own photography, I'll be a little busy in 2017, 2018.
Just a little.
Just a little bit, but it's a good busy. It's better. It's better than working in a job that I hate and showing up every day. With the Kodak stuff, I get to I actually look forward to meetings and doing all the stuff that I'm doing, because it's exciting, and I feel like I'm really impacting. On the Kodak side, I feel like I'm impacting the world from the kind of corporate 100-year-old historic photography perspective. And then on the TWiP side, I'm reporting on stuff, and we're building kind of this next generation network on the front end. So I get to hit it from both sides. And I'm probably one of the luckiest photographers in the world.
That's cool. So I think that is the perfect sort of ending point to this conversation. That's fantastic to just hear everything and just dive into all these topics with you. So where's the best place that people can connect with you on social media or email lists or anything to kind of follow what you're doing and the other things that are coming out in the future?
Sure. Yeah, well, thisweekinphoto.com is my site. But if they want to follow me, depending on where you want to find me at, just Frederick Van. If you Google Frederick Van, you can find all my presences there. They just, they'll show up.
All right, that's perfect. All right, well, thank you everybody for joining in on the show tonight, and thanks Frederick for having this conversation with me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
All right, so we will stop broadcasting and call it a night. All right, see you later.
All right, man. See you later.